Alright, YouTube, let's clear up a little bit of confusion that a couple people have on what this is. Uh, One of my main questions I get from people is, what did it start as? Referring to my truck. And a lot of people think it started as a Forester, in which it kind of did. I had a built Forester, built drivetrain. It was 420 some horsepower at the wheels back, 5, 6 years ago. But the body was rusting out like most Subarus of that era. And I didn't want to just throw it away. I worked at a steel fabricating place at the time. I was an office guy, but I spent a lot of time in the shop. I've welded in the past. We had tubing laying around everywhere. Tubing was cheap. I could get it cheap. I had access to a plasma cutter. I'm fluent in AutoCAD. So I essentially decided I was going to build a chassis to hold my drivetrain. Now, originally, this chassis was going to be like an Exo set. Somebody sent me a picture of an Exo set one time, and it had, I think, set up for McPherson struts, and I thought I could make it work. And I was real close to starting to build an Exo set style chassis until I saw Nigel Pachu's truck down in Australia. It's a Hilux Tacoma, but it has a full tube chassis underneath of it. He usually runs the body on it, so you wouldn't notice, but it is a full tube chassis. It looks not exactly like this, but it's similar. And that solved a lot of my problems with the DMV, because you have to have a hood, you have to have a cover over the fuel tank, you have to have, brakes, lights, steering, seats, all that stuff. There's a lot of gray areas about doors, but in my state and most states, the code is written just vague enough for you to be able to slip through areas. Like in Pennsylvania, it said it only needs doors if it's constructed with a roof and sides. No sides, no doors. So that's basically how, I knew a guy with a 9-foot high grocery cart who read, I think he does patent stuff or something for a living, so he's really good at reading between the lines, and he helped me understand what you can do and what you can't do. And a year later, I was done building my truck, but underneath it is this, almost exactly the same. It's been updated a little bit. Like, I never really liked how tall my roof was, so this one, the roof's a little bit taller, or I mean a little bit shorter. I think I cut 2 inches out of it. I didn't like how far out my steering wheel sticks, so on the newer ones, it's bent to kind of tuck up behind the steering wheel closer. That's pretty much it. I mean, everything else is the same. My front tire, when I went to 265s, and it's even worse now with these Porsche brakes, my front tire wheel on full lock rubbed the frame right there. So on these, I pushed it another inch forward. I started doing holes in the tubes. I can run brake lines or battery cables through. So that's a minor change. And that's pretty much it. I mean, this is the frame. It is built and laid out so that the front cross members, that's all you really use sheet metal wise from the original, from the donor. The cross member, engine cradle, bolts up in there. The lower control arm bolts to it. The back of the control arms mount back here. Struts obviously mount up there. And that's the whole front, bolted in. Transmission mount. Okay. Shift mount for the manuals. I only do manuals in the Subarus. And then this one isn't quite finished yet, but that mounts the center carrier for the drive shaft. Back here, it's a little bit different. Obviously, rear struts mount up. This is GD, SF, some GF, some GC. I think you probably have to change the top hats to run the GC, GF stuff. That's a minor Subaru thing. And then in the back, there's a couple changes because I don't have the big T-bar. and I don't have the body where the trailing arms mount for on the Subaru. So the only thing really custom on the suspension is I have made lateral arms, no, whatever the hell they are, and then there's a diff mount that holds the nose of the differential, and then back here these two mounts mount to the rear cross member, and then the lateral links mount to that. Struts up here, a couple little notches for clear the coilovers. You can use factory suspension, but it would just sit like a foot off the ground. I guess if you wanted a rally one, you could do that, but I don't know. There's not a lot of dirt roads around here, so mine's more street oriented. So now you know what it looks underneath. This is basically, everyone's seen it, what you get. Mine has the tow package. I use it all the time. Bed plate goes in here. These are all obviously custom made panels. I got the new wing stands. Wheels, tires, polycarbonate side panels. The seats just bolt in. These seats, this one's set up for fixed side mounts, fixed back seats like mine. I did one before, it had sliders. Guy was real short. and then it's just, it's just mostly custom after that. You put the panels in. But as far as the engine, where the hell's my cap? That's not good. Huh. So I paused there for a second, but a titanium lid for my overflow bottle is missing. I don't know if it vibrated off or if someone fucking jacked it. But whatever. Moving on. This is a closed deck 2.5 with 2-liter heads. Running 1700cc injectors, 8 AN fuel lines, flex fuel, carbureted ROM, 57mm Borg Warner turbo. It's an S257 SXE, the billet wheel, 360 thrust. It's basically a bulletproof turbo. Power steering, I got the pump off of an older model, so it's included with the reservoir. It's just so I don't have to find somewhere to mount the reservoir. Mishimoto radiator, parent intercooler, parent oil cooler. It's a Legacy Spec B GT transmission. I like the longer gear ratios. Yesterday I was towing this chassis home on the highway at 70 miles an hour at like 2,500 RPM. My EGTs never got over 1,200 degrees. I don't think I was even in boost. So it runs pretty good, it pulls pretty good. The clutch is an X clutch from Australia. I think they're called Extreme Clutch down there, but that name was taken up here. It's an X clutch, 9-inch twin disc. It's got the little rattle plate in the middle. I like when people tell me that my throw bearing's going bad and I should find a mechanic. Suspension, they're ISCs. I found them to be a pretty good budget coilover. I got 5 years on them now. Mine, the thingies don't work anymore because, well, they're out in the rain, out in the water sits in them. But normally they're under a hood or under like in your trunk. They don't get water inside them to jack up the adjuster. I never really played with them anyway. I have custom tubular control arms on mine. I used to use the stock ones, but I wanted to make the front track wider. I think it was for axle clearance. I've addressed that since, but it's just something you learn on when you build something from scratch. Corbeau seats, you can tell they're 5 years old, sitting out in the sun. R180 rear that matches the Legacy transmission. It's just a regular, actually it's a 3.454 rear end, because these transmissions up to a certain year or from a certain year have a 1.1 to 1 transfer gear. So it's The front differential's 390, but the rear runs 3.5 something, 3.45, and it's all because of the goofy gear in the transmission. That it's just what it is. What it is. Fuel filler out of a boat. A lot of stuff's out of a boat, actually, or trucks, semi trucks. I got all semi lights, semi brake lights, semi turn signals, motorcycle headlights. Although they've been changed many times, now they're just driving lights, but I like them. Still have the stock cluster in there. It's not a CAN bus car. Pre-08, it's all analog. Or digital, I guess you can call it, for on-off stuff. But it's analog. It's not CAN bus in all the digital dashes anymore, except for one I found, an AIM, is meant to be CAN bus. Now you can buy CAN bus adapters, but that's another $300-400 on top of the already $1,000 display. So for that reason, and the reason I need an odometer and the alternator, actually, I've tried a couple times just to use my tablet as a dash, but there's the little light and there's a little resistor in there for the alternator. If you take the dash out, you lose the alternator, unless you put a resistor in the alternator. It's not hard, but I haven't felt like doing it. So, still using that dash. That's pretty much it. If you got any more questions, or you want to see something else, let me know in the comments. I know this is kind of a long walkthrough, but trying to up my YouTube game, and I'm hoping this answers a lot of questions for the 6 or 7 people that are gonna watch this. So there will be more if things go well with this one. I think somebody wants it and they want me to put a driveline in it. So it'll be a GD driveline. It's going to be what I think is the best setup ever made by Subaru. But you can guess what I think that is. And I'm going to start getting this one cleaned up and turn this into a little competitor.